to the School Leader Advisory Committee meeting focused on the Youth Force NOLA CTE Super App Companion for New Orleans schools. This year, I'm really trying to focus and bring us back to these ideas that you've shared with us, especially over the past 2 years, about your priorities, and reinforce ways that we feel career-connected learning can support you. So you see lots of pieces here that we'll keep coming back to again and again this year. But today we're really focused on funding and thinking through how CTE courses help you generate additional funding for the work at your schools, but also how you can use those funds to be strategic in your planning, and therefore support your students to increase their test scores, their college and career readiness, your school performance scores, and I would say your students' social emotional learning and well-being as well, in finding these key areas that excite them about learning and excite them about their future career and lifestyle. So this Youth Force Super App Companion for New Orleans schools, the purpose is that it's a tool for you as educators to build a really strategic plan for the career pathways programs for your students. We are planning, this is our first version. We're planning to offer this and have you all complete this every year. But this one, of course, is going to focus on the 23-24 school year. We are calling it a Super App Companion because, as you know, you have to fill in the Super App for the Department of Education for each of your schools to plan out budgets at the same time that you're thinking through your curriculum choices, your staffing choices, your other student supports that are necessary. And there's one specific section on the Super App that really pertains to career technical education and career connected learning, and that's the Perkins section. Because all of us are in consortiums in this group, whether it's the Orleans Consortia that we manage or the Type 2 New Orleans Consortium that NOMA is acting as fiscal agent for, not every school has to fill that part out. We fill those parts out for you. We get your input on those pieces, but you aren't necessarily having to plan your CTE budgeting at the same time you're planning all of those other budget pieces. And we feel like that strategic planning piece aligned to budget is an area where we could really support you to do more meaningful planning. So this is a tool to support that. And we also hope that it'll help you in that second bullet point to envision the possible braiding of funds. We talk about that a lot, but we're hoping this tool helps you to actually see it and connect some dots about how those different sources could be pulled together. And also to build consensus between your school team members, your CMO team members, to understand the different aspects of this planning process. So everyone from CTE leaders to your CTE coordinators, your counselors, have to understand the programming aspects and build that. And then your finance and accounting side has to understand how the funding works within all of that. So we're hoping this tool also creates those conversations between those different groups that sometimes work closely together, but other times are a bit more separated, to really see how this all can fit together for a meaningful program for students and student success. We feel this is going to have a lot of value to you as schools. These are just a few of the ways we hope that it will help you. But we're, again, hoping it helps you to effectively use the CTE funding you have, maximize it, and also see then ways that you could potentially earn additional CTE dollars by offering additional courses that actually generate this funding, and also earn additional SPS points by getting your students to those higher levels of technical training and more advanced industry-based credentials. We are also hoping it will serve as a way to collaborate and facilitate the collaboration between you all, again, within your teams, but also with our training provider partners, with institutions of higher education that you partner with, and any other key partners in the process. Going back to the Perkins piece, as you know, we have a required comprehensive local needs assessment that I usually ask you all to submit additional questions and narratives and things like that. This will support us in doing that needs assessment, so you won't have to do a bunch of extra questions, and it'll all be more integrated into your general process. We're also going to use it to inform our Youth Force Partner School Grant process in the spring. So there'll be a simplified process for additional philanthropic funding through us. And of course, focus on the students, as always, enables those students to really experience a full pathway and to obtain those higher levels of credentials and skills that they need. Funding sources that we're covering here. These are different fundings that, again, can be braided together to provide for your CTE experiences for your students. So general funds or base MFP, that should be a major part of your CTE budget because it is the actual education cost for your students. It's part of their everyday learning, and therefore it should be a part of your general funds, general MFP budget. The reason that other CTE funding sources exist is because CTE courses are generally more expensive, whether that's in partnering with outside agencies for the technical training, buying equipment, buying those licenses for IBCs. So while general funds is meant to be the main source of that, of the budget, there are extra things like those adders to CTE funds that are supposed to support you with those additional costs. They're not supposed to be the only way you pay for CTE. They're supposed to be complementary and added on to that MFP to get to the technical place that you need to be to provide strong training. So those adders include CTE adders and career development funds or CDF funding. And then there's also funding that can be spent on different experience for students, and CTE is one of those. So your supplemental course academy funds can go towards training providers, institutions of higher education, and the CTE pieces they offer, and your direct student services money can also go towards CTE. We also want to name, again, Perkins, of course, is another valuable CTE funding source. Because all of us are in those consortium, we have those mutually beneficial rules. So that planning has to be consortia-wide rather than school-based. So we didn't put that directly in here because that's a bigger decision, and this planning will support us in our consortia planning. I'm going to pause there before I jump into the actual tool itself to see if there's any questions before we actually look at it and we walk you through the different pieces. All right, I'm going to go ahead and launch in. If you have questions as we go, feel free to raise your hands, add in the chats, come off mute. Also, let me know if any of my pages are not showing up correctly for you. But this is the actual tool. It is a spreadsheet. And this introduction page just kind of outlines those different pieces that I voiced to you just now. You'll also notice at the bottom, we are asking that you're completing this tool really alongside that super app process. And we're asking that you complete it and let us know when it's ready, but no later than January 27th, which is the super app due date. Again, trying to be planning alongside. So this first tab is going to guide you through some questions. We intentionally made it to sort of mirror the format of the super app in terms of key questions that push you in really specific directions for your planning. So we're starting with a sort of baseline of your career exploration course offerings with Quest for Success, asking if you're offering in 9th grade, 10th grade, or not planning to offer in those grade levels. We are intentionally pushing you towards those early grades to make sure that that exploration is happening early on and students have a chance to choose pathways in an informed way and also have time to actually complete the training to get to those higher levels. You'll then see there's 2 sections for how you're going to provide the higher levels of technical training in these really specific career pathways programs. So on row 8, we're asking about technical training providers that you think you may want to partner with for next year. We also want to make clear that you're not making a specific commitment to any of these pathways. You are just planning and being thoughtful and then sharing that plan with us so that we can support you in actually making these things happen. So please feel free to think about this is the ideal situation of what we want to offer when you're completing this tool. So you'll see the different pathways that our training provider partners offer. You'll be able to click off on key ones that you know you're interested in. You're not actually going to worry about this total tuition column yet because the next tabs will help to auto-populate that, and you can get that overall picture when you come back to this tab later on. We also, of course, recognize that training provider partners are not the only way to offer these pieces. They're meant to support you with technical expertise, equipment, all those pieces, but many of you offer things in-house as well. So the second part, starting at row 24, is to choose the technical training pathways that you're going to provide in-house. And we have a drop down of our key high wage areas and clusters. And then you can also let us know if you're going to partner, say, with Nunez or Delgado for a piece. Please put that here. There are so many different options with those higher education partners. We didn't list those, but obviously we encourage you to do those dual enrollment opportunities with them. And then also asking you for any of those pathways in-house or with higher education partners, let us know what's the final credential that you're hoping to offer. So if you're doing carpentry in-house, are you trying to get to carpentry level 2 as your highest possible? Are you trying to go beyond that? Do you think you can only get as far as level 1? That's what we want to know right here. And for those of you that do the LCTCS certifications, then you can also let us know that, because of course that goes hand in hand with those credentials. Yes, so say if you're NOMA and you're doing transportation, maritime, logistics pieces with Delgado, you would list that in that yellow section and let us know like the LCTCS certification that will be your highest level. So here, similar to the Super App, we also have worked with our training provider partners to create this training provider vendor guide, which is linked here. That will pop up for you when you're completing this and have lots of tabs for all of our different training providers to help you understand what they're really offering and how you can make it align with your programming at your schools. So we have an introduction page that shows you all the different partners and what they're offering. And then you can feel free to click through on the key pieces that you want to learn more about. So Sade, as our Director of Training Provider Partnerships, has been working really closely with them to edit and finalize and put all the key pieces in here to help your planning. So I'm going to let Sade guide me through a couple of these pieces so you get a sense of what the tool looks like.
Yes, guys. So this tool, this portion of the tool is used to give you all a comprehensive look of what course matriculation looks like for students who complete a pathway, along with the various entrance and exit points. We know that for our technical training provider partners, everything does not look the same, and we do offer lots of options for students. So here on a carpentry tab, of course, you all know carpentry goes through our training provider at NOTEP. And so we start out with just some general information on a pathway, as well as the contact name, so you know who to email and who your point of contact should be at the training provider partners. We also provide you with information about regional job openings and career maps. You will see on some of the tabs that the career maps are forthcoming because we do update those annually in partnership with GNO Inc. And so they are in the process of finalizing some of the career maps where the salary and certification information has been updated. So we are making sure that you all have the most up-to-date information to inform your choices, as well as to pass along to your students so that they have the proper information to make decisions on what pathways they will be interested in entering. The pathway descriptions here kind of give you an overview of what student options are for completing this pathway. The course progression piece is going to be very important. It's important to remember that the way the courses are laid out here is to give you all a consistent visual of what the matriculation looks like for a student. However, we have them labeled 11th grade, 10th grade, and things like that. For a lot of our programs, there are various entrance points. So carpentry, for an example, students can begin this at any secondary grade level, meaning they can begin at 9th grade or they can begin at 12th grade or anywhere in between. This is just what we know most schools think of as ideal, is for students to start their junior year and then complete through their senior year. However, depending on your master schedule and what your vision is for career connected learning at your school, students do have the opportunity to enter into these pathways at various grade levels, as well as exit them at various grade levels. We also have included tuition costs here. What I'm most excited about, because I'm a data person, y'all know that from my background, in addition to being in the classroom, but making sure that you all have the proper course codes and having the information you need about the credits for the courses, as well as the accountability points and the proper IBC names and IBC codes, so that you have all of that information up front. I know training providers historically provide you with that either at the signing of the MOU or towards the end of the semester when you're reaching out to say, hey, we need to input this data in our internal systems. This guide has the most up-to-date information for you all. We have also included what funding can be generated from a student enrolling in these courses. In addition to that, a lot of our training provider partners offer post-secondary opportunities to continue training. A lot of them are what launch our next level NOLA. Some of them have matriculation options through LCTCS and other partnerships. And so students' pathways do not have to end at graduation. They do have additional options. And so as you all are looking at this tool, please use it to think about how scheduling would fit within your master schedule as you're building it out for 23-24. I do want to say here that we did not include all of the summer and after school options, because this guide is strictly focused on like your daytime in school programming. Training providers do still offer after school and summer options. With that being said, you will also have the opportunity to speak directly with training providers at our training provider fair, which will be held December 8th. And so our goal is to put this in front of you today. When you all receive your individualized super app companions, you will get a version of this that you can kind of look through in more detail. We encourage you, any questions you have, please write them down. Sit down with your counselors, meet with them, see if they have any questions, and bring those to the training provider fair. Your counselors will also be invited to the training provider fair. We will have a version of the vendor guide to be released early spring. That's going to look similar to this, but have a little bit of a different set of information for your counselors. The reason we're doing that is because we have heard the counselor voices and they have said, listen, we need better tools to better guide our students and to have those conversations. And so at the training provider fair, one of our goals is to get additional feedback from counselors after they have looked at this and say, hey, what additional information do you need from training providers or from UForce in order to have informed conversations with students and families so that they can make choices that are fitting for them. So very excited about this tool. Hope you all find it useful.
To the School Leader Advisory Committee meeting focused on the UForce NOLA CTE Super. And I was trying to also pull up the career map. So this is an example of what those will link to. And as Sade said, these a little more student family friendly visuals to help you, but also to help your counselors and your students and families understand these pathways and where they can lead for students in the future. All right, so coming back to this tab. So this is your overall planning tab, as we said. Use it, having your training provider vendor guide open at the same time is going to help you every step of the way. But you're choosing key pieces here. And then in the next tab, pathway enrollment plan, you're going to dive into what that actually looks like on a course by course level. So for example, we're going to stick with carpentry. On this page, you're going to pick then the pathways that you want. So you're going to start with carpentry. And let's say if you are in your first year offering carpentry, then obviously you're going to offer carpentry year 1. We've made it so each dropdown is going to guide you to the possible options for that particular pathway. So if you're picking year 1, then again, we have it recommended on that vendor guide as a starting point for juniors. If you want to change that, obviously you talk to the vendor to see, as Sade said, what's possible. But we're going to plan that our juniors are going to take this, and maybe we have a class of about 20 students that we think are going to be interested. So that's what we are going to want to plan for. Once you click that, the spreadsheet will talk to itself and tell you how much it's going to cost for those 20 students. You can play around with this in any way you want to go through all those different pieces. Now, say it's you've already started with your carpentry and you've already offered a year 1 to some of your juniors this year. So then you're going to have carpentry year 2 for this year's students that you're hoping are going to continue. It's the plan that they continue through the progression. So as seniors, let's say you also had 20 last year, you're going to make sure that those 20 will have the opportunity to get that higher level credential. So that's part of why we have this broken out as underclassmen, then juniors, then seniors. Again, you can start lots of these things with the underclassmen, but really wanting to emphasize, you want to be planful with those juniors and seniors of where are they going to, where would you like them to enter, where are you hoping that they'll exit, and allowing that time and space for them to get to the highest possible credentials. I'm going to give one more example of with medical assistant, for example. If you pick that, it's only going to show you the things related to medical assistant. So say you had, again, students in year one. It's really important that you're thinking through this year, but then the following year, so that those students can actually get that medical assistant credential, because it does take 2 years of courses for them to even get to that completion of that pathway. So the idea is you're planning through the ideal situations for your next year, but really thinking through strategically of the parts that you need to continue and then things that you want to start. Just to show you a little bit more about how these drop downs work. If I take software development through Operation Spark, then I'm going to have a few different pieces with them because they offer different modes with a curriculum licensing option versus a push-in. And some of these, say if you pick curriculum license, you're going to maybe have way more students because it could be a teacher at your school who's trained to offer Adobe credential, not Adobe, who's trained to offer Operation Spark pieces already, certified in Operation Spark's IBCs, and say you're going to do curriculum licensing for 10 students as juniors. And then also maybe it's a class that's combined, could be 10th and juniors and seniors. You'll notice that the cost didn't change because that's a flat rate for their curriculum licensing. So all these different pieces, you don't have to think about how much is this going to cost. It's figuring it all out for you. So you can play around and understand your numbers based on different scenarios. And also noting this checkbox right here, this is to authorize us to share the information you put in here with our training providers. The intention is simply to facilitate those partnerships and move you from this planning phase or pre-planning phase to actual strategic, like when is it going to happen, how many students, how are making MOUs, considering data pieces, all those things. So if you give us permission, then we'll let them know what you're planning. Again, not holding you to it and wanting you to be really like straightforward and honest about what you think is possible. Also, please don't think of this as like you're trying to make any kind of impression on us with what you're offering. If you feel like you can only start students as seniors in this particular pathway for next year, then please say, yes, it's only going to be seniors. That's all we can do for next year. It's meant to just be like an honest planning tool. And then with the budget plan section, this is my favorite part. And I'm really going to give a shout out to David for thinking through how to show you all these different pieces that come together. So this is then how do I actually pay for it, which is always the key question. You have here some guidance on the actual uses of these different funding sources from LDOE. So give you a little more indication of what can be used for what. CTE adder, just as a note, that's calculated a little differently for the type 2 charters here and for the OPSB authorized charters, because it goes through a differentiated funding formula. So the way that you get it and the way you can use it is a little bit different. But there is a CTE adder for any CTE courses that you offer. CDF courses, again, a little more straightforward, emphasizing that $241 per credit per student this year can be used for tuition for those training provider partners. So not only are you generating it by offering those courses, but it also helps you to pay for the tuition for those courses. SEA, more tuition-based. CDF also can be used for transportation to those training providers and could be used for your in-house pieces around equipment, supplies, IBC licenses, that sort of thing. And then you have your direct student services, also supportive with the rules in here. And we also have that column for general funds, which again should be the majority when you're thinking through how you're going to spend this money or what you need to spend. And then if there's other things that don't really fit in any of these categories, but you know it's an option for you, then you can add it to this budget. Down here is where you get a sense of what your historic numbers have been. We can't guarantee what your numbers will be for next year, but you can then find your school and have it calculate for you and show you This is all public record information, but show you historically what you've received for CTE Adder, for CDF, for SCA. You can also then, especially if you're a CMO with multiple schools, see like what is the differences and how you're generating funds between these different schools, and think through, could we be adding courses that we offer at one school at this other school, or do something to generate more across your schools. Also, to perhaps spark conversation of a school maybe that has a huge amount of funds generated, to find out from their school leaders and their chief financial officers how they do that and how they make that work. Okay, to really demonstrate this though, I'm going to go back to here and put in a little more money in here. I shouldn't have deleted that yet. So say again, we're doing carpentry year 1 for 20 juniors. Then when I click over to my budget plan, it's going to not respond to me right away. I know what I did. We're going to fix that. But in the budget plan section, when I fix that piece, it'll come up with your total cost here and your budgeted numbers here. So the budgeted numbers come from what you put in for the CTE Adder, CDF, SCA. So if you know that you need to pay $60,000 for this, you're going to maybe do $40,000 from general funds and $10,000 from your CTE Adder and $10,000 from your CDF. And you can play around with those numbers as much as you need to understand how to meet the need to pay for that particular course. And what I'm going to do is undo a little bit, and it should bring me back. All right, so if I get back to this point, then I should have fixed what it was there. So here we have the total cost is showing up for you, and we still need to budget this. And that's where you can put in your costs and balance out your different pieces, thinking through what your historic amounts have been. So if your historic CDF has been, 60 to 80,000, clearly you're not going to put in 100,000 in CDF because you might not have that to spend. But that's just to give you some guidelines to think through what is going to be available to you to get to that amount. And if there's still a need to budget, then that hopefully sparks the conversation of, we really want to make this happen for these kids. What other funding sources could we possibly use and combine here? So that's basically how it's meant to work. And then just to show you the sort of snapshot picture that comes back on this first page, it will then put in the total tuition per training provider partner. So you then can start that conversation with an understanding of how much it's going to cost for each of those training providers. Again, due date, January 27th, same day as the super app. So you're doing it all together. All you have to do, because it already be shared with us, so you just have to email Jade, our program coordinator for school support and training providers, to let her know that it's ready. We're also going to offer ongoing support starting tomorrow. Every week on Wednesday from 11 to 12, I'll be available in my Zoom room, just hanging out and waiting for questions about this tool. And we can go through some planning together, whatever works for you. Don't need to make an appointment. I will send out the calendar invitation, but optional, drop in any Wednesday that works for you. And also November and January check-ins, regularly scheduled ones. We can also dive into this. Just let me know so we can make sure we have enough time in those check-ins to do that. And final support, as Sade said, December 8th in the morning at Junior Achievement. Training providers will be there as your vendors to talk through with you more specifically your plans, help you to understand the differences in what they offer, develop those finer points, and for your counselors to give us some input on making this information student and family friendly as well.